Welcome to the Red Half of Sheffield preview pod, where we are inevitably going to preview another loss, this time at the hands of Wolves, a team that in the reverse fixture we did beat, but it's probably one of the tricked you. The one showing we're pulling the lucky rabbit's foot out of our tail end. And I'm joined by Danny from the Whole Lotta Wolves podcast. Danny, how are you doing this morning?
Doing good, Chad. Good to see you again.
Let's get right into it. Pretty big win for you guys yesterday. 2-1 over one of the teams that I really hate with a passion. Sum it up. How did it? I mean, it seemed like it was a decent win for Wolves yesterday. What entailed this win?
Yeah, it was actually a pretty special win. We actually have had terrible luck down in London until I guess earlier in this year. So when we went down to Brentford and won 4-1 there, and that sort of seems to have turned our luck around. Since then, we beat Chelsea in London. Now we've beaten Spurs in London. And honestly, of the sort of big marquee results that Wolves have had this season, beating City at home, beating Chelsea home and away, and now beating Spurs, I'd put this result, this performance, probably at the top of them. I mean, obviously City's on another level, but to a certain extent, you just sort of sit back and hope that things fall your way. And there were some amazing performances littered throughout that result, but this one was more, I think, us going toe to toe with, as you said, a very good team. And so that, I think, felt especially good. I think if you replay the City game 10 times, we probably only win one of those, if that. Whereas I think if you replay this game with all the same players available 10 times, I think we showed in that one that maybe the odds are slightly more in our favor. Maybe 3 out of 10. I'd take that.
Yeah, it's certainly than 0 out of 10 when we come up against most of those teams. And I mean, it's one of those deals. It is what it is. We're just absolutely terrible, and we're just to let everybody know, we're previewing this Wolves game off the back of United just getting hammered 5-0 by Brighton. So yeah, we won the reverse fixture earlier in the season. It was one of our, as I said, we pulled the lucky rabbit's foot out of our backside. But what players? If I remember right, you had a big name player. I think Neto got injured the game prior to playing us, and I don't think was available to go against United. And I think we just, it was a shock that we beat Wolves, because I was like, we have no chance in absolute hell of beating these guys, and we did it. A fully fit side for Wolves going into this one?
Yeah, you got a good memory. I just had to go back and look. And yeah, Neto got injured in the Newcastle game, which was the one just before when we came to Sheffield United. And I think we were still figuring things out. We have an almost fully fit squad, but the notable absence now is Matheus Cunha, who during the time that Neto was injured, which was, up until very recently, Matheus Cunha has just become a superstar almost overnight at Wolves. His ability, we still don't really have a traditional number 9, and that can be said about a lot of teams fighting it out in the mid-table, but his ability to drop deep, receive the ball, and give and go, or to dribble, was just really propelling all of our results. Now he has picked up a hamstring injury, unfortunately. Hopefully, it seems like it'll be slightly shorter term, but he'll definitely not be around for the match on Sunday. But other than that, everyone seems to be okay. Hwang just got back from the Asia Cup and had some lingering injuries, but he did start against Spurs and didn't pick up any knocks. So I would assume that he's going to continue to start. And like you said, Pedro Neto is now sort of on fire, and his
Right.
weakness has always just been staying healthy. He's had not a ton of huge injuries, but he's over the course of the time he's been with us, he's had some notable ones that have kept him out a bit. But he's the one that gets all the media attention for getting a big move to quote unquote bigger teams. And he's starting to put together those kinds of performances that will get that kind of talk going. And honestly, I was saying to a friend of mine that yesterday's performance against Spurs is kind of one of those. It's one of those that gets clipped up on like all those YouTube highlight reels. The run that resulted in the assist for the winning goal is just one of those that you will no doubt see on a highlight reel somewhere. And the thumbnail for that video will be him in an Arsenal shirt or something.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no kidding. No kidding. Well, I'm glad to know that Neto is back and healthy, because he'll probably make us pay for not being able to play for us early in the season. Now, with Neto coming back in, has a once United player, Tommy Doyle, been fixated back on the bench where he was for a majority of the season, and then leading up to that game, and when I believe when Neto came out, Tommy Doyle came in to replace him in that game, and I think in played against United. Has he gone back to the bench, or is there almost a starting role for Tommy Doyle now?
Yeah, that's interesting. That's a good thing to bring up, I guess, because Tommy Doyle hadn't seen a bunch of time before then. He had come on and made a really good difference against Bournemouth, which I think was 2 games before we played you before. But other than that, he hadn't really gotten any minutes. He came off the bench again at Sheffield, and I think a lot of Wolves fans at the times felt that he probably should have started just because of the kind of game that it was going to be. And a lot of people thought that he looked good, but it was a difficult game to come into. I mean, that was a scrappy game. I remember the weather was terrible too.
Mm-hmm.
So that was a tough one. And then he had to sort of wait a bit longer. It felt like he was getting little moments here and there. And then we had, I think, João Gomez may have been suspended briefly, and then Mario Lemina went away for a little bit due to the passing of his father, and that ended up being I think a couple weeks, but it was like a very packed fixture schedule, so he played like I think 4 games in a row, and really I think won over a lot of fans. Not that they were skeptical at all, but they hadn't really seen what he could do. And he's had some really good performances since then. And now it has more of a feeling where Gary O'Neill will use the right a certain set of midfielders depending on what the challenge is. And he will, I wouldn't be surprised to see him come in, although now that João Gomez just scored a brace against Spurs, maybe he doesn't lose his spot. But this would feel more like a Tommy Doyle game because he tends to come on against teams that might sit back more, where we're going to have more possession. I mean, that's what he's good at, as I'm sure you know, is when we have the ball, that's what he is really useful for.
Yeah, for sure. We got all too comfortable. Man, I wish we would have brought him back on a loan this year, but unfortunately we couldn't. We brought his teammate McAtee back from City. All right. So Molineaux next Sunday. It's a weird kickoff too. It's 8:30 Eastern time next Sunday. So that's like 1:30 UK time, which is just bizarre. Full time. Give me your score prediction and how you think the match is going to go. 7, 8, 9, 10, 12 nil? I don't see us scoring anything.
You're way more pessimistic, or you're way more bullish on a Wolves win than a lot of Wolves fans are. This is like, I mean, obviously every team has that feeling that like, oh, we turn up against the big teams and then we can't break down a team that sits in. But I think we have seen over the last little bit that our away games where we don't have a bunch of the ball and we can play on the counter, we have looked a lot more dangerous. So I would not be surprised if this ended up being a closer game than maybe you expect. I mean, that being said, I mean, obviously, players like Neto and João Gomez and a handful of others are like really clicking right now. And sure, Could it be a blowout? Like, I guess I wouldn't rule it out, but the pessimistic Wolves fan in me cannot will not allow me to believe in that until I see it happen. So yeah, I mean, I would see a slightly more cagey game, especially if, as I expect, you guys will sit in a little bit away from home and look to frustrate us. Similar to like our last game before Spurs was Brentford, and they very much just kind of wanted us to have the ball and hit us on the counter. So I will say, a conservative. I would love just to get a nice, simple 1-0 victory and shake your hand and take the 3 points. And that's all I will ask for.
Oh man, you're so God. I don't see anything but a 3-0 drubbing. We're gonna get steamrolled, especially this game being. If this game was at Bramble Lane, but it's not. It's at Molineaux. I think you guys just home cooking is going to do it, and you guys are just going to have enough to get over the line. I think it'll be a hotly contested first half, and then it'll be a game of attrition, and it might be 0-0 at halftime, and then just second half we just don't have enough steam, and we start running out of gas, and then you slot 3. It'll be 2 quick goals and then 1 late goal is how I think it'll go. It'll be 3-0. Danny, before we go, I ask every single opposition supporter, what is your go-to match day beverage? It doesn't have to be an alcoholic one. It can be, or it can just be simple as water.
Well, I guess, obviously the morning kickoff's always a coffee in hand, but a lot of times the nerves need calming. And so I'd say that, the traditional thing around here in Baltimore is a National Bohemian, or as we call a Natty Bo, which is an iconic Baltimore beer. It used to be brewed here. Now it's brewed somewhere in New England because they're all owned by InBev now. but that would be the quick and easy one to do.
Cool deal. All right, Danny, before we get out of here, drop where everybody can follow the pod and you and all the social medias.
Yeah, I am the social media manager for Whole Lotta Wolves podcast, which is the first and only US-based Wolves podcast. And because I'm the social media manager, I'm the one that's making all the unhinged memes and whatever. And the actual good stuff goes on that Twitter account, which is at WLW Pod. And all the stuff that I think is, less appropriate goes on my personal one, which is at Baltimore Wolves.
Okay. Well, do have to check it out. I will certainly give you a follow after this. If you haven't done so, follow the podcast, Red Half of Sheffield, at Red Sheffield on X/Twitter or whatever it's called, our YouTube channel, Red Half of Sheffield. Follow me, CJarvis_13 on Twitter/X. And until next week, when we preview another inevitable defeat, I will leave you with this up the blades.